Hey guys, welcome back to Concordia Jedi. Before we get started here, we do have some more content that's going to be coming in the near future. You're going to want to stick around and see what it is. But in the meantime, I've been seeing videos going around not only on YouTube, but also other social media, Facebook, TikTok, whatever, about a certain lightsaber toy that's been kind of making some waves. It's not a replica, it's not metal, it is plastic, it's very similar to the kind of lightsaber toys we had growing up. You know, the old electronic lightsabers from the Revenge of the Sith, Phantom Menace prequel era. This right here is the Goliath power saber. And at first glance, doesn't look like a whole lot. Doesn't look like it's based off of a particular character. And that's because it's not. This lightsaber is actually not tied to Lucasfilm or Disney. Legally, it is not called a lightsaber, it's called a power saber, but in every sense of the word, it is a lightsaber. Now, what's interesting about this lightsaber is that this lightsaber can extend and retract by itself. Something that we've only really seen with the lightsabers used at the Disney parks in their shows. Now, this right here is very interesting because as a kid, I would have loved this. I had the electronic lightsabers growing up, and they were some of my favorite toys ever. But this right here, nowadays, more of a novelty than anything, but it is still pretty cool to have. So let's look at some details here. For a plastic lightsaber, it does have some very nice detail. I really like this, gold activation button here, and the little switch right here, which we'll get into in just a second. One of the very few electronic lightsabers, believe it or not, that you can actually hang on your belt. And that's mainly because the electronic lightsabers from Hasbro from the early 2000s were blades that you would flick out. And so they didn't really lock into place. And even the ones that could lock into place, the electronic lightsabers, like I think the Force Action lightsabers, the ones that extended with the push of a button, you couldn't hang them on your belt. This one, you can. Now, it is kind of a beefy hilt. It's not tiny at all, but that is because it does have to house the compartments for the mechanisms and the blade itself. It came with a very nice, plastic, acrylic, whatever, little display stand, so you can just set it down and display it. This isn't a saber that I would necessarily display, but it is still very nice, and it is nice that they give you a way to display it and store it. So, let's get into the features everyone wants to see here. So, this takes 4 AA batteries. You unscrew this little compartment down here. There will be a little slot that you take out. You put the batteries in, slot it back in, screw it back up. Sound comes out of this area here behind the clip and from the bottom. So with this saber, what you do first, press this little black switch here. You'll hear a little sound. That sound right there should mean that it's ready to be used. And when you want to extend the blade, you just slide the gold card up. I decided to go with green because green's my favorite color. And then slide it down for retraction. And then press it again to lock it, and then won't do anything. Now, let's get into the sounds of this thing. The first sound you're going to notice is that very loud gear sound that kind of overpowers the activation noise. Has a nice hum. Just 1 or 2 swing sounds. I think just 1 clash sound. And you can see all these little plastic pieces right here. Those are part of the compartment that allows it to retract. So I wouldn't recommend pushing this down to close it up. I'd leave it as is, and then put it right back in. To that activation again. And again, as a kid, I would have loved this thing. Like, this would have been one of the coolest things ever when I was a kid. But now, again, more of a novelty. It is made for kids. It's about $50, depending on where you get it from. I can't necessarily say I think it's worth the money, at least for me, because you've seen the kind of lightsabers I collect. So, with the price tag being $50, I can say for a novelty, yeah, it's worth it. It is one of the few lightsabers on the market available that is fully retractable by itself. With that said, something like this, I find a lot more enjoyment in. Mainly because it's metal, the lights and sounds are great, and this one can change colors. This one is whichever color you pick. Now, with that said, it is kind of like comparing apples to oranges. But I've also seen some channels claiming this to be like the biggest step forward in toy lightsabers. And I don't really collect, toy lightsabers anymore. I go with like the collectibles and like the replicas. But I have to say, as cool as this is, to me, it feels a bit unnecessary. For one thing, I feel like this would be a lightsaber that, if kids were fighting with, would be fairly easy to damage the components. Now, I'm not sure if they have any warranties or anything. Mine came with an option for one, but I'm not really going to be fighting with this thing. And overall, I think a lot of what manufacturers are doing with toy lightsabers these days are kind of missing the point of what made these things so special when we were kids. For me, the best era for toy lightsabers was the 2000s, because you had the electronic lightsabers like the Obi-Wan one, which I had, that not only was not retractable, but it was a lot bulkier, it was a lot bigger, but the upside to that was that they were a lot more durable. You knew that you weren't going to break anything in the blade by hitting it. And they had different features depending on which character you could get. And as cool as it is, seeing like all the forge lightsabers and blade builders and whatever, there's just not that same charm to them as the old ones had. The old ones, you could tell easily which character they were based on. The new ones seem to do kind of like mishmashes of the characters or what they're about. And even with something like this, that's not really based on a character, I think this is more of a pet peeve of mine, more than the manufacturers outright trying to spite me. But I remember when I was a kid, like, the electronic lightsabers you get, the blades were way better. Like, they were at least 3 feet long, and you felt like you were holding a lightsaber. This one, I feel like I'm holding like a short sword. But that said, it is still pretty cool. It's just not for me. I personally don't think it's worth the money unless this was like a dream of yours growing up. A dream of yours to have a lightsaber that fully extended and retracts at the push of a button. And again, another thing that's really kind of annoying about the saber, the gear sounds when it's extending or retracting, very loud, overpowers some of the other sounds on the saber. But again, this is probably something that they're gonna look into in the future. They're probably going to put out a new version that's not as loud. I don't know. When I was growing up, I was never looking for a lightsaber that, like, the extension or traction wasn't the thing for me, because I would just flick them out anyway and just start swinging with them. For me, the big thing I wanted when I was a kid was just for the hilts to be a little more accurate. I was a weird kid. I was kind of a stickler for accuracy. So, final thoughts on this? It's cool. It's very cool. And again, for the novelty of being able to have a lightsaber that extends and retracts on its own, it is really, really cool. Me personally, I couldn't see myself getting another one of these. I'll hold on to this one for the novelty of it. But what do you guys think? Does it seem like something you'd be interested in? Or are you like me, just more excited about all the collectible ones and the ones you can fight with? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. We'll see you next time.